Welcome. You've arrived, not by mere chance or random occurrence, but perhaps guided by a subtle, insistent whisper from the depths of your own being. This is a sanctuary where you may truly rest, a rare space where the relentless need to strive simply dissolves. This is the metaphorical empty boat, a vessel adrift in the serene expanse between a conscious breath and profound silence, where the timeless wisdom of ancient Zen stories and the gentle embrace of modern healing modalities converge much like moonlight, softly dancing on the placid surface of a tranquil pond. The external world, with its incessant demands and frenetic pace, may be loud, restless, and perpetually rushing towards some unseen, ever receding horizon. But within the contemplative embrace of these narratives, there is no urgency, no existential pressure to become someone else, no compelling need to fix what you perceive as broken. Instead, there is only the profound, open hearted invitation to soften, to consciously return to your authentic self, and to remember the intrinsic wisdom that lies within. Each tale you are about to encounter is far more than a mere story. It functions as a carefully crafted doorway, leading you inexorably into realms of deep stillness, into moments of pure, unadulterated wonder, and into that sacred inner space that has always instinctively known how to let go. Through the ethereal whispers of venerable monks and the soft glow of old lanterns across the windswept courtyards of ancient temples and the forgotten beauty of overgrown gardens, through the heavy burden of wounds carried and the miraculous grace of hearts finally reopening, these 25 interwoven stories will gently guide you home. This home is not a fixed destination, but rather a profound state of presence. So find a quiet space, a sanctuary within or without. Consciously let your shoulders drop, shedding the accumulated tension of the day. Allow your breath to deepen, expanding into your core. Let the relentless demands and distractions of the day simply fall away like autumn leaves from a branch. We begin now with the first profound narrative. The inaugural tale, titled The Bamboo That Bends, unfolds on a morning that ushers in the coldest breath of early spring. Novice monk Rio, his young face etched with an earnest intensity, pushes open the heavily creaking gate to the ancient monastery, nestled humbly at the very foot of the majestic Mount Suru. His robes, woven from coarse, undyed fabric, are damp with the pervasive mist that clings to everything, and each exhalation forms delicate ephemeral clouds that vanish into the chill air as quickly as they emerge. Rio has journeyed for many days, leaving behind a world he no longer possessed the capacity to comprehend, a modern landscape defined by the oppressive tyranny of deadlines, the hypnotic glow of ubiquitous screens, the bitter taste of broken promises, and an unshakable, pervasive feeling of perpetually falling short, of never quite being enough. Deep within the core of his being, he carries the almost unbearable weight of a singular, insistent question. How truly do I let go of this relentless need for control? This existential query has pursued him, relentlessly clinging to his consciousness like an unwelcome shadow, an unwelcome companion in his solitude. The desperate, almost frantic desire to cling to the past, to specific people, to meticulously crafted plans that stubbornly refuse to unfold according to his meticulously laid out intentions, had left him utterly, profoundly exhausted. His therapist, a kind but somewhat distant woman, had recommended meditation. His well-meaning friends had enthusiastically suggested a rejuvenating vacation. Yet despite these well-intentioned interventions, none of it had managed to soften the vice-like grip that seemed to constrict his very chest, tightening with every breath. And so here he stands, a young man barefoot in the numbing snowmelt of the early morning, bowing respectfully before the venerable elder monk at the gate. He asks not for explicit answers, not for complex theological explanations, but simply profoundly for silence. The abbot, a man whose profound age is so evident that the very folds of his face appear to have been intricately carved by the relentless patient chisel of time itself, offers no verbal response. He simply bows in return a gesture of profound acceptance, then wordlessly hands Rio a straw broom and points with a gnarled finger towards the whispering bamboo grove that graces the very edge of the temple grounds. And so, without a single spoken instruction, Rio begins to sweep. He sweeps, not just for hours, but for days, then weeks, then months, losing himself in the rhythmic, repetitive motion. He sweeps the delicate fallen leaves in the ethereal light of dawn, each rustle a soft murmur against the quiet. He sweeps countless petals carried on the playful breath of the wind vibrant specks against the drab earth. He even sweeps the pristine snowflakes as they gently descend, only for them to be covered again, an endless serene cycle of effort and impermanence. No one imparts wisdom or guidance. No one tells him what elusive spiritual truth he should seek. No one provides him with a specific mantra to chant or a lengthy philosophical lecture to absorb. The profound enveloping silence is his sole unwavering companion, punctuated only by the soft, constant creaking of the bamboo as it sways with a gentle hypnotic rhythm in the wind. One quiet evening, as the vibrant energy of spring gradually gives way to the languid warmth of summer, Rio stands beneath the largest, most ancient stalk in the grove, its green limbs reaching towards the darkening sky. A ferocious storm had swept through the valley the previous night, bringing with it violent winds that shrieked through the trees, and a sky as dark and oppressive as despair itself. Yet miraculously not a single bamboo stalk had broken. They had bent low almost to the very earth, their flexible forms yielding completely to the storm's fury, only to return to their upright, dignified posture once the tempest had spent its rage. Rio turns to the abbot, who has appeared beside him with an almost imperceptible silent movement, as if conjured from the very air. Master Rio asks softly, his voice imbued with a newfound reverence, "Why is it that the bamboo does not break?" The abbot gazes at the young monk, his eyes the color of smooth, ancient river stones, calm, clear, and seemingly boundless. He reaches out a gnarled hand and gently taps the resilient bamboo stalk. Because it does not resist the wind, he replies, his voice a low, resonant murmur. It does not stubbornly attempt to hold itself rigidly upright, defiant against the forces of nature. Instead, it bows, it yields, and in that profound act of surrender, it endures. Rio falls into a deep, contemplative silence, a profound tremor passing through something deep within his chest, a realization dawning. But if it lets go completely, won't it fall? Won't it be destroyed? He presses his voice imbued with a raw vulnerability. If I truly let go of control, what will truly become of me? Will I simply vanish, dissipate into nothingness? The abbot smiles, a gentle knowing curve of his lips, wisdom radiating from his ancient eyes. You do not vanish when you yield, child. On the contrary, you return softer, wiser, freer. Letting go is not your end. It is your beginning. That night, Rio sits under the pale, benevolent light of the moon, nestled within the quiet sanctuary of the grove. He watches mesmerized as the bamboo sways with the gentle breeze, each stalk dancing its silent ancient prayer, an unspoken hymn to impermanence and resilience. For the very first time in his young life, he doesn't feel the desperate gnawing need to fix himself, to improve, to achieve some elusive state of perfection. He doesn't feel the urge to grasp, to force, to stubbornly resist the inherent flow of life. He simply places his hands palms up in his lap, a gesture of profound acceptance. He breathes deeply and rhythmically. He lets go, and nothing breaks. In fact, something profoundly beautiful, something previously constricted, begins to open within him. Zen reflection, the art of non resistance and true freedom. In the profound philosophical tapestry of Zen, the image of bamboo transcends its botanical form. It serves as a potent and living mirror of an awakened life, a state of being utterly aligned with the universe's inherent flow. Its hollow interior symbolizes a mind liberated from the relentless sticky grip of grasping desires, expectations, and attachments. Such a mind is spacious, open, ready to receive. Its inherent flexibility is not a sign of weakness, but rather a profound testament to its strength. It can bow low almost to the very earth without sacrificing its intrinsic integrity or innate resilience. Its deep, pervasive root system firmly anchors it to the earth, drawing sustenance and stability, even as its slender stalks gracefully move and dance with the vast, boundless sky. This intricate balance of groundedness and adaptability is the essence of its wisdom. All too often, we as human beings spend an inordinate amount of our lives bracing ourselves against the metaphorical winds of change, the unexpected squalls of misfortune, and the relentless currents of impermanence. We stubbornly attempt to remain rigidly upright, to hold ourselves together with sheer unyielding will, believing that rigidity equates to strength. Yet the undeniable, often harsh truth is that it is the rigid tree, the one that refuses to bend, that inevitably snaps under pressure, while the pliant bamboo, with its innate wisdom of yielding, adapts, survives, and ultimately thrives. This is a crucial lesson in resilience, not through forceful confrontation, but through elegant adaptation. The Buddha, in his boundless compassion and profound wisdom, taught the middle way, a path that skillfully navigates between the extremes of excessive indulgence and rigid ascetic denial. This middle way is not about avoiding life's complexities, but embracing a state of flow, cultivating an unwavering presence, and embracing humble acceptance. To let go is not to disintegrate, to fall apart into chaos, or to disappear. On the contrary, it is a profound act of trusting in the inherent impermanence of all phenomena and recognizing that we are not the sole, isolated orchestrators of every event, every outcome. Instead, we are humble, interconnected participants in something far vaster, far more mysterious, and infinitely more intricate than our individual egos can ever conceive. The pursuit of control is at its core merely a dream, an elaborate illusion conjured by the mind to alleviate anxiety in an unpredictable world. Presence, however, is the tangible reality, the here and now that is always available, always true. It is in this radical acceptance of what is that true freedom lies. The bamboo's lesson extends beyond mere survival. It embodies a dynamic, responsive presence. It teaches that true strength is not about resisting external forces, but about cultivating an internal flexibility that allows us to move with them. When the wind comes, the bamboo does not fight. It yields. It does not lament its bending. It experiences it, fully trusting its innate ability to return. This is the essence of non attachment, not detachment from life, but freedom within life, allowing experiences to flow through us without clinging, knowing that our fundamental nature remains untouched. Rio's journey is a microcosm of this universal truth. He did not achieve peace by forcefully confronting his inner turmoil, but by allowing it to simply be observing it with the same gentle non resistance as the bamboo observes the wind. His shedding of the need to fix himself was the first crucial step towards realizing he was never fundamentally broken. Psychological insight, the illusion of control, and the path to resilience. From the nuanced perspective of modern psychology, particularly within the transformative frameworks of trauma recovery and mindfulness-based therapies, the deeply ingrained and often overwhelming need for control is frequently understood as a deeply embedded coping mechanism. It functions as a meticulously constructed psychological armor donned to shield the vulnerable self from the perceived onslaught of uncertainty, the piercing sting of pain, or the profound primal terror of abandonment. Individuals who by circumstance mature within chaotic, unpredictable, or emotionally unstable environments often learn through visceral experience that a rigid adherence to control directly equates to a precarious sense of safety. Control in such contexts becomes the insidious illusion of power over a reality that is by its very nature inherently unpredictable and often overwhelming. However, when this once adaptive coping mechanism calcifies into rigid, unyielding control, it paradoxically transforms into a psychological cage. This rigid adherence to control fuels a pervasive chronic anxiety, manifesting as an endless internal monologue of, what if this goes wrong? What catastrophe looms just around the corner? It inevitably breeds burnout driven by the relentless internal imperative, I simply must hold everything together lest it all collapse. It relentlessly manifests as perfectionism, a relentless pursuit of flawlessness born from the terrifying conviction that if I make even one mistake, everything I've built will utterly fall apart. And it fosters a profound, debilitating fear of intimacy, whispering the self-sabotaging thought, if I truly open up, if I expose my authentic self, I will inevitably lose control and thus my safety. Letting go in the precise and empathetic language of therapy is far from a passive resignation or an act of weakness. It is, in fact, a deeply courageous and empowering act of surrender. This surrender does not imply giving up or giving in, but rather arises from a profound and hard-won trust in the inherent wisdom of the present moment, trust in the self-regulatory capacities of our own nervous system, and a radical acceptance of the inherent impermanence of all emotions and experiences. Rio's poignant story, though, set in a spiritual context, is by no means unique to the monastic path. It is a profound mirror, reflecting a universal human struggle. We all, in our individual ways, metaphorically, sweep our own flaws, diligently striving to impose order upon what is often inherent chaos to tidy up the messy, unpredictable landscape of our inner worlds. Yet the real, truly transformative shift, the genesis of deep healing, occurs precisely when we cease the exhausting battle against the metaphorical storm and instead learn with a gentle, self-compassionate acceptance to bend with it. This bending is not defeat. It is adaptive strength, a demonstration of true psychological flexibility. From a neurobiological standpoint, chronic control triggers the sympathetic nervous system, keeping us in a perpetual state of fight or flight. This leads to elevated cortisol levels, muscle tension, and cognitive rigidity. Learning to let go conversely activates the parasympathetic nervous system, promoting a rest and digest state. This shift allows for the release of chronic tension, improves emotional regulation, and fosters greater cognitive flexibility. For individuals with a history of trauma, where a sense of helplessness was pervasive, rigid control can become a vital but ultimately self-limiting coping mechanism. Therapy aims not to strip away this control aggressively, but to gently introduce the possibility of choosing to let go, creating a sense of agency and safety in the present moment. Rio's internal shift from exhausted striving to peaceful presence reflects this neurobiological and psychological integration. His nervous system, once on high alert, was finally able to downregulate, allowing him to truly rest and digest the impermanence of life without fear. The profound peace he found was not an external reward for his efforts, but an internal state that emerged when he allowed himself to yield to trust the inherent wisdom of his own being. Meditative closing, embracing the bamboo within. Tonight, as the vibrant energies of the day gently begin to recede, take a quiet moment to consciously ask yourself, with genuine curiosity and a tender heart, where in the intricate tapestry of my life am I still relentlessly attempting to control the uncontrollable? What would it truly deeply feel like to trust the unfolding of life instead of perpetually tensing against it? Find a quiet, undisturbed space, a sanctuary within your own environment. Allow your shoulders to visibly drop, releasing any lingering tension you might be holding. Permit your breath to deepen, becoming a slow, deliberate, and profoundly rhythmic presence within your body. With each gentle, elongated exhale, consciously visualize, releasing your shoulders, shedding the weight of your expectations, and letting go of the lingering, often painful echoes of your past. Now picture yourself vividly as a resilient, vibrant bamboo stalk. See its deep, anchoring roots firmly planted in the earth, drawing strength and stability. Feel its inherent softness, its natural pliability, allowing it to sway effortlessly with the gentlest breeze. Recognize its vibrant aliveness, its capacity for growth and adaptation. Experience its innate ability to yield completely, to bend low, almost to the very earth, without ever losing the fundamental essence of who you are. The Buddha, in his profound and timeless wisdom, once sagely observed, "You only lose what you cling to." Therefore, perhaps the very freedom you so desperately seek, the liberation you yearn for, resides not in a tenacious, white-knuckled grip on what is, but in the gentle, liberating art of bowing to what is to the present moment, with all its inherent imperfections and uncertainties. And when the inevitable winds of change, of challenge, of loss inevitably come, as they always do, simply let them move through you. Allow them to pass, to reshape, to refine. You will not break. Instead, you will emerge not diminished, but profoundly transformed, softer, imbued with a deeper empathy and understanding, stronger rooted in an authentic resilience, and truly free, unburdened by the illusion of control. Embrace the wisdom of the bamboo, for its quiet strength is a reflection of your own. The journey continues leading us from the gentle yielding of the bamboo to the profound wisdom of tending our inner landscape. Life, in its boundless complexity, constantly presents us with energies, emotions, and impulses that, if left untended, can consume or overwhelm us. Yet, just as a master gardener understands the nature of his plants, so too can we learn to understand and wisely manage the powerful forces that arise within. This segment delves into the transformative power of mindful observation, the art of disengaging from reactivity, and the profound liberation that comes from becoming a conscious caretaker of our own emotional and mental states. It speaks to the universal struggle with anger, the quiet brilliance of children's presence, and the subtle yet profound shift from seeking to simply seeing. The second story, The Monk Who Fed the Fire, takes us to the remote mountains of northern Japan, where the winters linger like a long hushed breath over the land. Here, an old monk named Kao dedicates his life to tending the sacred flame, the heart of the monastery. He is the keeper of the fire, the one responsible for its constant warmth, its gentle illumination of the meditation hall, and its guiding light for the novices when the sun vanishes early behind snow clouds. Kao rarely speaks, his days filled with the rhythmic sounds of sweeping ashes chopping wood and kneeling by the ancient fire pit. Yet one truth is universally known among the monks. No one under any circumstance disturbs Kao when he is tending the fire. Whispers suggest that long ago, before he donned the humble gray robe and shaved his head, Kao was a man consumed by fierce anger, nearly having killed someone in a fit of rage, a rival in the village, a profound betrayal. The details are scattered like broken pottery shards, fragmented and unclear. What matters now is that Kao never raises his voice, not even when young monks spill rice on the altar, not when snow leaks through the roof, soaking precious scrolls, not even when his own hands crack and bleed from the brutal task of chopping frozen logs. Only once does he speak of his past anger, and it is to a boy named Toma, a novice who arrived at the monastery with a fire already burning fiercely within his own young chest. Toma is quick-tempered. He clenches his fists when spoken to, argues with silence, and furrows his brow so tightly that the older monks affectionately, though not unkindly, begin to call him the little tiger. One morning, after Toma shouts at a fellow monk for misplacing a blanket, he is summoned by the abbot. But instead of punishment, the abbot gives him a simple, enigmatic instruction. Go to the fire, monk. Stay there until the snow melts. Toma doesn't understand. Is this exile a chore, a lesson? He climbs the snowy path to the small, secluded fire hut, where Kao is already feeding pine logs into the gaping mouth of the stone hearth. Without looking up, the old monk hands the boy a pair of thick gloves and points to a formidable pile of frozen branches outside. And so begins Toma's long winter of fire. They speak little. Days merge into weeks, filled with the crackling symphony of the fire, the sharp thud of splitting logs, and the mournful moan of the wind through the mountain trees. Toma grows increasingly impatient, his frustration simmering. Why am I here? He finally blurts out one day, flinging a stick into the fire with an uncharacteristic burst of anger. I didn't mean to shout, people make mistakes. Why do I get punished while others act so weak? Kao watches the flames rise, dancing and swirling. Then, after a long, deliberate pause that seems to stretch into eternity, he speaks, You're not here to be punished. You're here to see the fire. Toma snorts a cynical, dismissive sound. I've seen fire before. The old monk turns his head slowly, his gaze neither soft nor stern but clear like glass before it's blown into shape. Then you've only seen what it does, he says, his voice low and steady, not what it is, and he falls silent again, the profound statement hanging in the air. The days grow colder, the logs burn hotter, and Toma, despite his initial reluctance, chops carries and tends all the while watching. He observes the way dry wood ignites quickly, flaring up, consuming itself in seconds, a brief explosive dance. He notices how wet logs hiss and spit, filling the small room with acrid smoke, their resistance palpable. He begins to see how some embers buried deceptively beneath layers of ash still glow hours after the fire appears to be dead, holding a hidden, persistent warmth. And he learns that feeding too much wood at once makes the fire choke, suffocate, and ultimately collapse. The fire, he realizes with a growing sense of awe, is alive, and so too is his own anger. One night, as the wind screams outside, piling snow high against the walls, Cow invites Toma to sit beside him. The fire blazes low and steady, emanating a comforting warmth, its golden light breathing softly into the hut. The old monk reaches into the ashes and carefully pulls out a half-burnt piece of wood. This was a green branch, he says, holding it up for Toma to see. It burned poorly? Why? Toma hesitates, pondering the question. Because it wasn't ready, he finally replies. Cow kneads slowly, a faint smile touching his lips. When we're young, our anger is green, raw, wet. We don't know how to burn it clean, so it smokes, it blinds, it hurts. He pauses, then gently places the branch back into the fire, where it slowly begins to glow, transforming. But if we learn to tend it, to feed it slowly, to sit with it instead of throwing it at others, even anger can become light. Zen reflection, the alchemist of emotion. Zen philosophy does not demand that we deny our emotions, nor does it advocate for their eradication. Instead, it offers a radical invitation to see them clearly without becoming consumed or identified by them. Anger, much like fire, is not inherently evil or morally reprehensible. It is fundamentally energy. It serves as a potent signal, a raw, visceral heat that can, if left untended, burn everything in its path, ourselves, those we love, and the elusive peace we desperately seek. The Buddha, in his profound teachings, never called for the outright eradication of anger. Rather, he meticulously taught the practice of right relationship with it. Holding on to anger, he famously stated, is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Zen practice therefore invites us to become fire keepers, not fire suppressors, and certainly not fire throwers. We are encouraged to learn the subtle art of sitting by the flame of our own reactivity, and with self-compassion to say, I see you. You are a part of me. Let me tend to you. Let me understand you. Just as Cow patiently tended the monastery hearth, we too can learn to transmute our inner fire into warmth, illumination, and clarity, rather than allowing it to become a destructive force of war. This understanding of anger as raw energy rather than an inherently bad emotion is a cornerstone of Zen. It recognizes that emotions are transient, arising and passing like all phenomena. The suffering comes not from the feeling itself, but from our clinging to it, our resistance to it, or our unconscious reactivity to it. When we resist anger, we amplify it. When we cling to it, it becomes a part of our identity. Zen teaches that true freedom comes from stepping back, observing the heat, the smoke, the impulse without judgment or entanglement. It's about creating space between the stimulus and our response. This space is where wisdom resides, where we can choose to tend the fire instead of being consumed by it. It's a radical act of self awareness and self mastery, not through suppression, but through profound understanding and acceptance. The gentle, consistent rhythm of cows' fire tending mirrors, the patience required for inner work, a slow, deliberate feeding of awareness, a constant attention to the internal climate. Psychological insight, unmasking anger, and cultivating emotional regulation. In the landscape of modern psychology, particularly within cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT and somatic experiencing SE anger is frequently understood as a secondary emotion, often serving as a protective mask for deeper, more vulnerable feelings such as hurt, fear, profound sadness, or shame. Children who grow up in environments where they consistently feel unsafe, powerless, or unseen often develop anger as a primary form of self protection. It becomes a hardened armor, a quick and effective way to push others away and to reclaim a semblance of control in unpredictable situations. However, unprocessed and unexpressed anger carries significant, often devastating consequences. It isolates us, eroding the very foundations of trust and connection in our relationships. It disconnects us from vulnerability, which paradoxically is the root of true intimacy, authentic connection, and profound healing. Toma's initial fire was not inherently wrong or pathological, it was simply untrained. Most of us, much like Toma, were never explicitly taught how to skillfully sit with our inner fire, how to breathe through its intense heat, or how to articulate our needs and boundaries through words rather than through explosive screams. Modern mindfulness-based therapies, such as dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, actively encourage and teach specific techniques for emotional regulation. These include the conscious pause before reaction, creating a vital space between impulse and action. The practice of naming the emotion aloud, acknowledging its presence without judgment. Breathing into the sensation of the emotion without immediately acting on it, and crucially investigating the story beneath it. This deeper inquiry involves asking oneself, what underlying hurt am I desperately trying to protect? What essential boundary was crossed? What grief or loss am I desperately avoiding by expressing anger? When we engage in this profound self-inquiry, when we ask these questions with genuine curiosity and compassion, anger often softens. The lashing flames of reactivity begin to subside, and the fire, instead of destroying, begins to light the way. The psychological function of anger is often misunderstood. It's not just a destructive force, it's a powerful motivator for change, a signal that something is amiss. When transmuted, it can fuel assertiveness, clarity, and the courage to speak one's truth. The boiling kettle metaphor is highly relevant here. The pressure builds, but our response to that pressure determines the outcome. Do we let it explode, or do we gently remove it from the heat source and allow the pressure to dissipate safely? This aligns with DBT's concept of emotion regulation skills, which empower individuals to experience strong emotions without being overwhelmed by them, preventing impulsive or harmful behaviors. Toma's transformation wasn't about suppressing his anger, but about learning to witness it, to understand its origins, and to channel its energy constructively. This journey from reactivity to conscious response is a cornerstone of emotional maturity and psychological well being. Meditative closing tending your sacred flame. Tonight, as you prepare to settle into your own quiet space, invite a gentle awareness to your inner landscape. As you breathe, allow yourself to imagine a small kettle, perhaps an old familiar one, sitting gently on a subtle flame. You are not the flame, nor are you the kettle. You are the wise observer. You watch the water within the kettle gradually grow warm, then begin to simmer and finally to boil. You do not panic, you do not flinch or recoil. You simply observe its transformation with a calm, unruffled presence. As the bubbles rise to the surface, as the steam begins to coil into the air, say softly to yourself, in a voice filled with compassion, I feel the heat. I do not fear it. I can choose when to lift the kettle. Let each deliberate breath you take be like a cool, soothing cloth gently wrapped around the warm vessel of your emotions. Let each conscious pause be an act of profound kindness to yourself, a moment of intentional non reactivity. Allow your emotions to boil if they must. Acknowledge their natural energetic surge, but crucially let them do so safely contained within a vessel of compassion and mindful awareness. The Buddha, in his profound wisdom, declared, Speak only the speech that neither torments self nor does harm to others. That speech is truly well spoken. This timeless teaching reminds us that anger itself is not the enemy. Rather, it is our unconscious impulsive reaction to it that causes harm. So when the water within you boils, when the heat of strong emotion arises, do not fear it. Do not flee from it. Simply consciously remove it from the heat. And in the subtle, ethereal rising steam, as the pressure gently dissipates, you may just find that you see your own reflection clearer, more authentic, and more profoundly peaceful than ever before. Our journey deepens, moving from the dynamic tending of inner fire to the profound practice of presence in every step, every moment. This section explores how stillness can be found, not just in formal meditation, but in the most ordinary acts, and how true insight often arrives when we cease striving to fill ourselves and instead embrace the profound wisdom of emptiness. It delves into the discomfort of mental noise, the illusion of constant seeking, and the liberating truth that we are always inherently enough. The third story, The Sound of One Step, opens just after dawn as May arrives at the temple garden. The fog still clings low to the earth, like a child reluctant to release the comforting embrace of sleep. The grass glistens with dew, each blade a tiny jewel, and the winding stone path softened by the ethereal light glows faintly. Under the silver hush of the morning, May believes herself to be the sole awakened soul, or so she thinks. May has always walked fast, her pace, a relentless march forward. Her friends often joked that she walked as if she had somewhere infinitely better to be even when she didn't. At the university, she was renowned for her sharp, incisive questions and her even sharper, more purposeful strides. Yet none of them truly knew the depth of her aversion to silence, or how her body never fully relaxed, not even in the supposed sanctuary of sleep. She arrived at the monastery not because she sought enlightenment, not because she pursued profound spiritual answers, but because a persistent, dull ache had begun to settle in her chest every single morning, even before her eyes opened to the day. The doctor, perplexed by the elusive symptoms, labeled it stress. The therapist with a more discerning eye called it anxiety, but neither could tell her what to do with this unnamed hollowness, this gnawing void that seemed to reside just beneath her ribs. When she finally arrived at the monastery, the abbot, with his characteristic simplicity, merely said, "Walk." And so May walked. At first, she wandered the temple grounds out of sheer politeness, a sense of obligation. She tried diligently to slow her pace to embody the serene grace she observed in the other monks, but her body stubbornly twitched, her knees involuntarily bent forward, and her breath, frantic and shallow, seemed to perpetually run ahead of her. After 3 days of this internal struggle, the abbot presented her with an unusually enigmatic instruction. Walk the path of 100 stones, but with one absolute condition: you must hear the sound of every step. Every step? She queried, her voice tinged with incredulity. He smiled, a gentle knowing curve of his lips. Yes, every single one. That's impossible, she retorted, her mind already protesting the futility of the task. Then you will have much to learn, he replied, his gaze unwavering. The very next morning, May embarked on her task at the base of the winding garden path. 100 meticulously hand-cut stones laid in a graceful arcing curve around the serene lotus pond stretched before her. She placed her heel down, then the ball of her foot, then her toes, each motion deliberate. The sound was incredibly faint, a soft tap, a subtle crunch, a whispered swish of fabric. But by the third step, her restless mind was already hopelessly lost in a labyrinth of internal chatter. What if I'm doing it wrong? Should I breathe in on the right foot or the left? Did I leave the kettle on in my room? She shook her head, attempting to dislodge the intrusive thoughts. Again, step, sound, again. By the 10th stone, a dull ache had begun to settle in her knees. By the 15th, her mind was screaming in protest, a cacophony of impatience and self-criticism. By the 20th, an overwhelming urge to simply quit, to abandon the ridiculous task, surged through her. But something stubborn deep within her, that same relentless drive that had once fueled her all-night study sessions and her meticulous 10-year career plans, refused to let her surrender. And so she returned the next day, and the next, and the next, until the relentless noise of her thoughts slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to settle. And in their newfound stillness, something else began to emerge. It began with a single breath, long, quiet, and profoundly soft, like the gentle rustle of a passing silk robe. She stepped, and for one fleeting moment, just one, she truly heard it, the profound, complete sound of a single step. It was not loud, it was not special or dramatic, but it was utterly complete, and in that exquisite, fleeting moment, May felt something crack, not break, but profoundly open inside her chest. She continued walking her pace now, unhurried, her attention anchored to each deliberate movement. Weeks passed, marked by the gradual unfolding of the lotus blossoms on the pond and the cheerful return of migratory birds. And May no longer walked to arrive somewhere. She simply walked to walk. One day she found herself weeping, not from pain or sorrow, but from something else entirely. A profound sense of relief, an exquisite feeling of presence, a visceral realization that for the first time in years, her body and her soul were unequivocally in the very same place. Later, the abbot joined her on the path, walking in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, she asked quietly, her voice still tinged with wonder, "Why did you make me walk like that, Master?" He stopped, his gaze gentle and knowing. Because your life is 100 steps. He said, his voice soft but resonant, and you, dear May, were missing 99 of them. Zen reflection, the pilgrimage of each step. In the profound teachings of Zen walking meditation, or Kinhin, is not merely a structured practice. It is at its very core a profound return. Each deliberate step becomes an act of awakening, not a means to journey to some distant destination, but a conscious way to come home to this present moment. Thich Nhat Hanh, the revered Vietnamese Zen master, beautifully encapsulated this truth when he wrote, "Walk as if your feet are kissing the earth." In Zen, the essence of the practice is not about the pace of your journey. It is fundamentally about the presence with which you undertake it. When we walk mindfully with our attention fully engaged in the sensation of each step, we intentionally break the pervasive trance of speed, the relentless urgency that often defines modern life. We reclaim the miraculous inherent wisdom of the body, allowing it to move in alignment with the earth's rhythm. We consciously reconnect with the life-giving flow of our breath, the grounding pull of gravity, and the vibrant, undeniable pulse of life itself. May's transformative journey was not about moving forward in a linear sense. It was about moving inward, one conscious, deliberate step at a time, each footfall a revelation. The concept of being present in Zen is not about a rigid adherence to a technique, but a softening into direct experience. The noise in May's mind, her internal chatter, was a form of dissociation, a separation from her physical experience and the immediacy of the moment. By focusing on the tangible sensation of her steps, she was gently pulled back into her body, grounding herself in reality. And this reconnection is vital. Zen masters often speak of the original mind, a state of pure awareness, untainted by thought or judgment. When May could hear the sound of a single step in its completeness, she was touching this original mind, experiencing reality directly without the filtering lens of her anxieties or expectations. This was not a forced state, but a natural unfolding that occurred once the dust of her racing thoughts began to settle. The path was always there. She simply hadn't been walking it with her full being. Psychological insight, grounding the overwhelmed self through mindful movement. In the context of modern psychological understanding, chronic dissociation has become a pervasive phenomenon deeply embedded in the fabric of contemporary life. We rush through our days perpetually multitasking, consuming meals without truly tasting, speaking without truly listening, and walking without ever noticing the grounding sensation of the earth beneath our feet. This pervasive disconnection from our present experience and from our own bodies acts as a potent fuel for anxiety, leading to profound states of burnout and an insidious sense that life is simply passing us by, unexperienced and unfulfilled. Mindful walking or walking meditation is not merely a spiritual practice. It is a scientifically supported and clinically effective intervention. Research indicates that it actively reduces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, effectively regulates breathing, and heart rate, profoundly grounds the nervous system, and significantly increases emotional regulation. For individuals grappling with the complexities of trauma, anxiety, or depression, walking meditation can serve as a gentle, accessible pathway to reconnect with the body, offering a less intense and potentially overwhelming alternative to seated stillness. May's pervasive tension wasn't solely physical. It was the cumulative result of years of living perpetually ahead of herself, constantly chasing the next elusive goal, always striving for future achievements, and perpetually avoiding the uncomfortable stillness where her deepest fears and unprocessed emotions lay hidden. However, when she consciously chose to return her full attention to her step, to the rhythmic flow of her breath, and to the inherent reality of her present moment, the profound process of healing began. The path, in essence, was always there waiting for her. She had simply not been walking it with conscious awareness. Psychologically, May's initial resistance and mental noise are common manifestations of an overactive doing mode of mind, often driven by a belief that productivity and constant mental activity are essential for worth or safety. This mode keeps individuals disconnected from their internal states and sensory experience. Mindful walking shifts the brain into a being mode, fostering non judgmental awareness of the present. This re engages the prefrontal cortex, which is crucial for emotional regulation, and helps quiet the amygdala, the brain's fear center. The act of hearing every step forced May's attention away from her anxious thoughts and onto direct sensory input, a powerful grounding technique in trauma therapy. It's about cultivating interoception, the ability to perceive and understand internal bodily sensations, which is often disrupted in anxiety and trauma. By reconnecting with her physical body through the simple act, May began to rebuild trust in her internal experience and her capacity to be present without being overwhelmed. Her weeping was not a sign of breakdown, but a release, a powerful indicator of emotional integration and the softening of her rigid defenses. Meditative closing, kissing the earth with each step. Tonight, as the day draws to a close, bestow upon yourself a profound gift. Seek out a quiet space. It might be a silent hallway within your home, a small patch of garden, or even a simple square of earth just outside your door. If possible, gently remove your shoes, allowing your bare feet to connect directly with the ground. Begin to walk slowly with deliberate intention. Feel each foot as it gently rises from the ground, then each heel as it softly touches down, followed by the gentle pressure of your toes as they press into the surface. Allow the subtle sound of your steps to become a resonant bell, a mindful chime marking each moment. And as you walk, gently ask yourself, with genuine curiosity, where in my life have I been rushing, perpetually racing ahead? Which precious parts of my life have I walked past unnoticed and unappreciated? Let each conscious step you take be a profound prayer, a tender kiss to the earth beneath you, a deliberate act of coming home to yourself. The Buddha, in his enlightenment, walked for 45 years after his awakening. He did not walk in a hurry, not to escape anything, but to be fully present with each footfall, with each person he encountered, with each precious breath. May you too walk in such a way. One step, one sound, one profound life lived in presence. Allow your walking to become a moving meditation, a fluid dance of awareness. Let the earth support you, and let your connection to it deepen with every intentional movement. The freedom you seek isn't found in a destination, but in the profound awareness of the journey itself. Our journey continues shifting our focus from the physical act of mindful walking to the subtle yet profound inner landscapes of our minds and emotions. This section explores the wisdom of emptiness as a prerequisite for true understanding the illusion of an already full cup and the transformative power of observing our thoughts and feelings like passing clouds rather than becoming entangled within them. It speaks to the universal human tendency to over intellectualize, to cling to knowledge as a form of control, and the liberating realization that profound peace isn't found by silencing the mind, but by recognizing the vast clear sky of awareness beneath the mental chatter. The fourth story, The Teacup Was Already Full, introduces us to a scholar who embarked on a long, arduous pilgrimage to seek the wisdom of a renowned Zen master. He had traversed mountains and rivers, leaving behind his eager students and towering stacks of ancient scrolls, all for the singular purpose of sitting at the feet of a teacher known only as Master Haku, whose profound silence was rumored to cut through confusion like moonlight piercing the densest clouds. The scholar named Isamu carried himself with an air of immense pride, not the pride of wealth or worldly power, but the deep, almost palpable pride of extensive knowledge. He had meticulously studied countless scriptures, engaged in rigorous debates within the hallowed halls of temples, and could recite entire sutras by heart with flawless precision. And yet, despite this formidable intellectual prowess, something deep within him remained unsettled, a persistent unease that no amount of learning seemed to quell. His brilliant mind, though capable of intricate thought, never truly rested. Even during meditation, it relentlessly searched for answers. Even while breathing, it calculated complex equations. Even during prayer, it whispered incessant questions rustling through his consciousness like restless leaves in the night. He harbored a firm belief that he was supremely ready for enlightenment, that he had accumulated all the necessary knowledge. But what he received instead was a simple, unassuming cup of tea. Master Haku welcomed him with a quiet, disarming kindness. He said nothing of the scholar's formidable reputation, nor did he comment on the heavy scholarly books that bulged within Isamu's satchel. Instead, with a gentle gesture, he invited Isamu to sit on the veranda overlooking the meticulously maintained moss garden, an expanse of vibrant green stillness. "Would you like some tea?" the master asked, a subtle, knowing smile playing on his lips. Isamu bowed politely, his demeanor formal. "Yes, master," he replied, his voice earnest. "But I have also come with many pressing questions, questions that have haunted my intellect for years." The master, without acknowledging the questions, proceeded to pour the tea. The warm, amber liquid flowed gently, steadily into the small, delicate clay cup. Steam rose gracefully like fragrant incense curling into the air. But the master did not stop pouring. The tea reached the brim, a shimmering liquid dome, and then inexorably it overflowed, spilling down the sides of the cup onto the polished wooden tray, and even soaking into the scholar's pristine robes. Startled by the unexpected overflow, Isamu gasped, his composure momentarily shattered. "Master, the cup is full," he exclaimed, his voice betraying his surprise. Haku looked at him with an unwavering, tranquil gaze, his eyes reflecting the deep calm of the garden. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but resonant. "Yes, like your mind. How can I possibly offer you anything new, anything profound if you are already full?" That evening, Isamu sat alone in the moonlit garden, his scholarly books resting beside him, unopened, their knowledge momentarily irrelevant. He watched utterly mesmerized as a diligent spider meticulously spun its intricate web between two slender bamboo poles, a silent testament to focused creation. He listened intently to the rhythmic croaking of the frogs in the lotus pond, a natural symphony against the night's stillness. And slowly, almost painfully, a profound understanding began to dawn upon him. His years of accumulation of knowledge of social status, of vast spiritual vocabulary, had ironically transformed into impenetrable walls. He had tragically confused knowing about truth with being the truth confusing concepts with direct experience. And now, in the quiet clarity of that evening, he viscerally saw the profound difference. That night he did not reach for his journal to pen his usual eloquent reflections. He simply listened to the profound silence as if it were a sacred scripture, an unspoken truth whispered directly by the benevolent moon. Zen reflection, the wisdom of emptiness and openness. In the profound philosophy of Zen emptiness, sunyata is not to be understood as a mere lack of void or an absence. On the contrary, it is revered as the ultimate space, the boundless expanse where true insight can arise, where unadulterated truth can manifest, and where the present moment can arrive in its pristine form, utterly unimpeded by the cluttered projections of the ego mind. A mind that is already perpetually full of rigid opinions, entrenched judgments, and sticky attachments, much like the overflowing teacup, simply cannot receive anything new, anything truly transformative. The teacup metaphor stands as one of the most enduring and universally recognized parables in Zen teachings. It serves as a gentle yet powerful reminder. If you genuinely seek to fill your being with wisdom, with compassion, with liberation, you must first learn to empty the self of self. This emptiness is not a nihilistic state of voidness. It is not a terrifying abyss. Instead, it is a radical openness, a vastness akin to the sky, which effortlessly allows clouds to pass through without being affected or defined by them. When Isamu, driven by intellectual pride, attempted to approach the spiritual path with a mind already overflowing with preconceived notions, he found himself lost in a labyrinth of confusion. It was only when he began the challenging yet liberating process of unlearning, of shedding what he thought he knew, that he began to discover genuine clarity. The cup must be empty not because the tea of truth is rare or elusive, but because what truly matters is how we hold it, with what state of mind and heart we approach the sacred. This principle of emptiness is foundational. It speaks to the idea that our conceptual frameworks, while useful, can also become barriers. When our minds are constantly processing, labeling, and judging, we miss the direct, unmediated experience of reality. The full cup represents a mind that is constantly narrating, explaining, and intellectualizing life rather than simply living it. True wisdom in Zen is not found through analysis, but in the stillness that precedes and encompasses it. It's about cultivating a beginner's mind shoshin, where every moment is approached with fresh eyes, free from the accumulated weight of past experiences and future expectations. Isamu's realization was profound because he moved from intellectual understanding to experiential knowing. He didn't just learn about emptiness, he felt its presence in the silence of the garden. Psychological insight, cognitive rigidity, and the liberation of presence. Within the nuanced frameworks of cognitive psychology and trauma-informed therapy, the concept of the already full cup manifests as cognitive rigidity. This refers to an individual's ingrained inability to readily accept new perspectives, to integrate contradictory information, or to adapt their existing belief systems when faced with novel experiences. This rigidity is often reinforced by confirmation bias, a pervasive human tendency to selectively seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms existing beliefs while conveniently ignoring or dismissing evidence that challenges them. Furthermore, over intellectualization is a common coping mechanism where individuals resort to excessive thinking, analyzing, and rationalizing as a means of avoiding difficult or uncomfortable emotions. Isamu's initial state of being a mind perpetually overflowing with knowledge and questions perfectly reflects this common psychological pattern, the chronic mental noise of overthinking, overplanning, and overanalyzing, all driven by an underlying, often unconscious hope of maintaining absolute control in an unpredictable world. In mindfulness based therapies, particularly mindfulness based cognitive therapy, MBCT, one of the foundational and most crucial steps is to cultivate the ability to notice the busy mind without feeding it. This involves observing the incessant stream of thoughts, judgments, and opinions without becoming entangled in their narrative, without giving them further energy or validity. It's about recognizing when the cup is full, when the mind is operating at maximum capacity with its internal chatter, and consciously learning to stop pouring additional mental content into it. This deliberate act of creating inner emptiness, of pausing the incessant mental activity, actively allows for the emergence of presence, facilitates emotional integration, and paves the way for a deeper, more profound healing that transcends mere intellectual concepts. A mind, despite having read hundreds of books on the complexities of love, may still harbor a profound, debilitating fear of intimacy. It may meticulously memorize every single teaching of the Buddha, yet never truly experience a moment of genuine peace. The transformative shift, the moment of true liberation, occurs when we cease the relentless act of adding information, of accumulating more knowledge, and instead begin the gentle, courageous practice of allowing what is to simply be in its raw and unfiltered form. This full cup phenomenon is closely linked to identity. For many, intellectual prowess or a particular spiritual identity, like a seeker of enlightenment, becomes central to their sense of self. To empty the cup feels like losing that identity, which can be terrifying. However, therapy like Zen gently guides individuals to understand that true identity is not found in what one knows or achieves, but in the inherent awareness that observes these things. The goal is not to become ignorant, but to be able to choose when to engage intellectually and when to rest in direct, unmediated experience. This creates psychological flexibility, allowing individuals to navigate life with less rigidity and more adaptability. Osamu's ultimate shift from demanding answers to listening to silence is a powerful illustration of this. He moved from identifying with his thoughts to simply observing them, creating the space for true presence to emerge. Meditative closing, becoming the open vessel. Tonight, as the day gradually winds down, engage in a simple yet profound practice. Find a comforting cup of tea, perhaps your favorite blend. Hold it gently in your hands, feeling its warmth, inhaling its soothing aroma, and observing the delicate tendrils of steam rising into the air. Before you take your first sip, pause. With a curious and open heart, ask yourself, what at this very moment fills my cup? What thoughts, what judgments, what expectations, what attachments are currently occupying my inner space? And then with a gentle intention ask, what can I consciously empty, not to lose something precious, but to create sacred room within myself? Let your breath become your pouring, a rhythmic dance of release. Let each slow, deliberate exhale be an act of emptying just a little more. A bit of tension, a fragment of an old story, a sliver of the ego self that constantly tries to define you. The Buddha, in his profound teachings, likened a mind clinging to opinions to a full pot that cannot be filled by rain, stating that wisdom cannot enter a mind that clings. So tonight, consciously practice becoming the empty cup, not vacant or devoid, but profoundly ready, not hollow or incomplete, but expansively open, not broken or shattered, but deeply receptive. And then, when the luminous tea of truth ultimately comes, when insight naturally arises from within you, will truly taste it, savoring its essence. And it will not only nourish your intellect, but will profoundly nurture your entire being, body, mind, and spirit. The fifth story, Clouds Over the Lake, continues our exploration of mental landscapes, but shifts the metaphor from a teacup to a vast, tranquil body of water. The lake had always been there, an ancient, enduring presence, still quiet, utterly undemanding. Long before the monastery was built on its northern shore, long before the walking trails curved gracefully around its edges, the lake had rested like a great placid mirror beneath the boundless sky, faithfully reflecting whatever passed above it, fleeting clouds, the serene glow of moonlight, the effortless flight of birds, the raw power of thunder. But for Hana, the lake had become far more than just a geographical feature. It had transformed into her most profound teacher and her most sacred sanctuary. When she first arrived at the temple, her eyes were shadowed heavy with the oppressive weight of years spent relentlessly running from herself. She had once been a brilliant teacher in the bustling city, composed, capable, and outwardly calm, until one day the inexplicable happened. She simply could not get out of bed. Not for class, not for food, not even for the raw, visceral sound of her own crying. The doctors, baffled by her profound lethargy, labeled it anxiety with depressive features. She, however, simply called it the fog. It began softly, subtly, like a slight tightness in her chest before public speaking engagements. Then it settled in more persistently, like a constant pressure behind her eyes, an uncontrollable tremor. In her hands, a dull, pervasive roar of thoughts she simply could not escape. Everything felt, overwhelmingly like too much. Even the simplest acts, like brushing her teeth or deciding what to eat. She came to the temple not in search of definitive answers, but in desperate pursuit of stillness. And for weeks, she didn't speak to anyone, her only companion, the silent, mirroring presence of the lake. At first, her ingrained habits of self-judgment persisted. She chastised herself. I should be meditating more. I should be diligently studying the sutras. I should be healing faster, moving beyond this state more quickly. But the old nun who quietly brought her meals simply bowed a gesture of profound acceptance and gently offered so that the lake does not hurry, and yet it is always whole. So Hana watched. She observed with meticulous attention how the clouds came and went, sometimes thin and ethereal, like ghost-like whispers across the sky, sometimes thick and ominous, pregnant with the promise of a storm. She noticed how the surface of the lake, ever present, reflected them, but only briefly. Even when the clouds were at their heaviest, casting deep shadows, the lake itself remained fundamentally lake, its essential nature unchanged. And then a profound understanding, subtle yet earth-shattering, began to dawn upon her. Her mind, with its endless stream of thoughts and emotions, was not the tumultuous storm itself. Her mind was the vast, boundless sky above. Her deeper being, her true essence, was the tranquil lake beneath vast, still, and utterly untouched by the fleeting drama of the clouds. One morning, a monk named Aki silently joined her beside the lake. They sat together for a long while, sharing the profound stillness their presence a quiet harmony. Then, after a deep, shared silence, Hana spoke, her voice barely a whisper against the gentle breeze. Some days, she confessed, the clouds are so dark, so overwhelming, I completely forget the lake is still here beneath it all. Aki smiled gently, a knowing light in his eyes. That is because the clouds pass through your thoughts. He said, his voice soft but clear. But if you return to the body, you will remember the water. She didn't fully grasp his meaning at first, but he patiently guided her. Feel your feet on the earth, he instructed. Feel the breath rise and fall in your chest. Listen to the wind as it whispers through the reeds. Watch the clouds without becoming them, without identifying with their passing forms. And so she did. She consciously felt her spine gently straighten, a subtle alignment. Her breath deepened, filling her lungs with life. Her fingers, once clenched in subtle tension, began to unclench, relaxing into an open posture. It was a subtle shift, not dramatic, not immediate, but undeniably profound. For the first time in months, she did not feel trapped or suffocated by the relentless churn of her own mind. Instead, she felt anchored, rooted in the present moment, held by the grounding presence of the earth, held by the vast, unmoving stillness of the lake. Zen reflection, the unchanging sky of awareness. In Zen philosophy, thoughts are consistently likened to clouds, ephemeral, transient, drifting across the vast expanse of the mind without any inherent substance or lasting power. They may cast temporary shadows, momentarily obscuring the light, but they fundamentally do not and cannot alter the inherent nature of the boundless sky. The lake in this poignant story powerfully symbolizes the original mind, or pure awareness, the deep, unchanging consciousness that remains inherently clear, tranquil, and whole, regardless of the turbulent mental weather that passes above it. The core practice in Zen is not to forcibly stop thoughts, nor is it to engage in a futile battle against them. Instead, it is to observe them with equanimity, to watch them rise and fall without judgment, without clinging, and without identifying with their content. Zen teaches with profound simplicity. Let thoughts come and go like clouds passing through a spacious sky. Do not chase after them, desperately trying to catch or control them. Do not resist them, clinging to their presence or absence. Simply return to the present. This is the essence of mindfulness, not to suppress or deny emotion, but to see it clearly, to acknowledge its transient nature, and to witness it without becoming consumed or identified by it. The lake, in its immutable essence, remains. The storm, however fierce, inevitably passes. Hana's journey beautifully illustrates the psychological and spiritual truth that our fundamental being, our core awareness, is untouched by the narratives and emotions that swirl through our minds. Just as the lake retains its nature, regardless of the reflections on its surface, our awareness remains clear and whole, even amidst the most turbulent thoughts and feelings. The practice isn't about achieving a blank mind, but about changing our relationship to our thoughts. Instead of being lost in the clouds, we become the observer of the clouds. This shift in perspective is what allows for peace and liberation. It fosters a sense of spaciousness where even intense emotions can be held and witnessed without overwhelming the core self. Psychological insight, diffusion, and the anchoring power of the body. From a modern psychological perspective, particularly within the contexts of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT and mindfulness based stress reduction, MBSR anxiety, is often deeply rooted in the anticipation of danger. It is the body's ancient primal way of maintaining a state of hyper alertness, even when there is no genuine immediate threat present in the external environment. Chronic anxiety flourishes when we begin to fear the fear itself, when the uncomfortable bodily sensations and racing thoughts associated with anxiety become a source of profound dread. In this state, we frequently avoid uncomfortable bodily sensations, and critically, we tend to fuse with our thoughts, mistakenly believing them to be absolute, undeniable facts rather than transient mental events. What Hannah experienced, the overwhelming fog and the pervasive sense that her thoughts were an unyielding reality, is a common and deeply distressing experience for many individuals. It's the feeling that the mind's incessant stories cannot be questioned, that they are incontrovertible truths. However, in therapeutic approaches like ACT and MBSR, clients are systematically taught the vital skill of diffusion from thoughts. This involves learning to observe thoughts as mere passing phenomena, as transient mental events, rather than absolute undeniable truths that must be acted upon. For instance, the self critical thought, "I'm not good enough," can be reframed as, "I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough." Similarly, the bleak prediction, "I'll never get better," can be reframed as, "Here is a fear about the future." This seemingly small, subtle shift from rigid identification with thoughts to compassionate observation of them is precisely where the profound process of healing begins. Hannah's transformative realization by the lake wasn't that her thoughts miraculously ceased to exist. It was that she stopped blindly believing every single one of them, stopped letting them define her reality. She remembered the vast, unchanging sky, and she remembered the deep, still water beneath. And in doing so, she profoundly remembered herself, her true, untouched essence. The psychological concept of grounding is central to Hannah's experience. When Aki guided her to return to the body, he was teaching her a fundamental grounding technique. By focusing on sensory input feet, on the earth breath in the chest, sound of the wind, she was able to disengage from the overwhelming mental narrative and anchor herself in the present moment. This is particularly crucial for individuals experiencing anxiety or dissociation, as it helps regulate the nervous system and creates a sense of safety within the body. Hannah's journey illustrates that the mind is a powerful tool, but it can also become a source of suffering when we identify too strongly with its contents. The path to freedom lies not in controlling the mind, but in changing our relationship to it, becoming the witness, not the captive. Meditative closing, resting in the stillness of the lake within. Tonight, as the world outside prepares for slumber, grant yourself the precious gift of quiet reflection. Lie down in a comfortable position, allowing your body to soften into the surface beneath you. Gently close your eyes. Imagine with vivid detail a perfectly still lake nestled peacefully beneath a vast, boundless sky. Now picture your thoughts as clouds drifting effortlessly across that expansive sky. Some thoughts might be small and wispy like delicate morning mists. Others might be grand and thunderous, like the promise of a coming storm. As these clouds, your thoughts gently drift and transform, softly say to yourself with profound compassion and acceptance, "This is just a thought. It will pass. I am the sky beneath the storm." Place a hand gently and reassuringly upon your chest, feeling the subtle, rhythmic rise and fall of your breath. Feel the palpable sensation of your breath as it fills you and then as it gently releases. Acknowledge you are here. Affirm you are not broken. Reclaim your intrinsic role. You are the witness. And finally, embrace the profound truth. You are the lake. The Buddha, in his profound wisdom, once eloquently stated, "Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame." Let your meditative practice tonight embody the unwavering stillness of that rock. Let your profound presence be the calm, unshakable center beneath all the ceaseless change and flux. Whatever clouds may come tomorrow, whatever mental storms may gather, remember this indelible truth. The sky remains vast and untouched. The water remains clear and reflecting. And so too do you. Our immersive journey through the quiet corridors of Zen wisdom and psychological insight now culminates in the profound realization that true liberation often lies not in seeking, but in truly hearing what is already present, and in discovering that the very freedom we yearn for has always been intrinsically ours. This final section explores the deeper dimensions of silence, the courage to embrace change and vulnerability, the acceptance of self in all its facets, and the ultimate recognition that the only true barriers are those we construct within our own minds. The sixth story, "The Silence in the Bell," invites us to listen beyond the obvious. Every morning, long before the first blush of dawn painted the sky, the great bronze bell of the monastery rang out across the valley. Its resonant voice, deep and full-bodied, rolled like a tangible wave over the treetops across the serene lotus ponds and echoed from the ancient rooftops, penetrating even the quiet caves of sleeping animals and weaving into the dreams of distant villages. It was not a sound to be ignored. It was rich alive, a primal force, akin to the very breath of the mountain itself. The bell bore a name, Shingetsu, or Heart Moon. No one at the temple recalled who had bestowed this evocative name, only that its presence was as ancient as the monastery itself. And each time its majestic voice resonated, a profound silence followed, a stillness so deep it felt as though time itself had paused, bowing its head in reverence. Yet one novice named Sora, despite her keen hearing, could not truly perceive it. She could certainly hear the sound itself. The bell's commanding toll was unmistakable, undeniable. What she couldn't hear, couldn't grasp, was the sacred space that came after the profound emptiness that contained all potential. Sora was new to the monastery, having arrived from the bustling city. A relentless soundscape of blaring car horns, piercing sirens, incessant notifications, and the grating dissonance of arguments. Her life had been perpetually enveloped in noise, a constant assault on her senses. And somewhere along the way, this external cacophony had migrated inward, settling within her very being. Even in the profound stillness of the Zendo meditation hall, her thoughts screamed a frantic inner clamor. Am I doing this right? Why can't I focus? Why does everyone else seem so utterly calm? What's the point of any of this? The bell rang each morning, a solemn demarcation signaling the commencement of meditation. But for Sora, it merely heralded the onset of an inner storm, a maelstrom of self-doubt and anxious chatter. She longed with a desperate intensity for peace, for respite. But her mind paradoxically seemed louder than ever a tyrannical overlord. One day, overwhelmed by frustration, she approached the old bell keeper, a gentle monk named Renji, whose physical hearing had begun to fade with age, but whose heart, it seemed, heard everything with crystal clarity. "I don't understand, master," Sora confessed, her voice strained. "The bell rings, and then nothing. Just emptiness." Renji looked at her, a slow, compassionate smile spreading across his ancient face, and gestured for her to sit. "That nothing," he said, his voice a soft rumble, "is the deepest sound of all." That night, Sora humbly asked if she could help ring the bell. Renji, with a quiet nod, agreed. They ascended the worn steps of the bell tower in silence, the cool night air tinged with the earthy scent of cedar and the subtle hint of wind-blown ash. The moon, a luminous disk, hung low in the sky, softly brushing the tops of the towering pine trees. Renji showed her the ancient technique: how to stand, how to hold the massive wooden striker, how to center her breath, aligning her physical form with the impending sound. "Don't just strike," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Invite." She didn't fully understand the subtle distinction until she finally did. The first time she rang the bell herself, a profound vibration coursed through her entire chest. The sound was not merely external. It echoed deep within her bones, a forgotten note resonating again after lifetimes of silence. The bell, she realized, didn't shatter the stillness. It profoundly revealed it. And when the magnificent sound slowly faded, what remained was not an absence, not a void. It was a presence more whole, more profound than any words could describe. The next morning, Sora sat for meditation. The bell rang, as it always did, but this time she listened differently, not to the sound itself, but to the vast sacred space that followed. It was immense, vibrantly alive, profoundly soothing. It welcomed her, wrapping around her like a warm, comforting shawl. The silence was not empty. It was full of breath, of patient waiting, of an ineffable peace. For the very first time since arriving at the temple, she did not feel separate from it. She had, in that profound moment, become the silence. Zen reflection. The ground of being in stillness. In Zen, silence is never merely the absence of sound. Instead, it is revered as the very ground of being, the boundless space from which all sound arises and to which all sound eventually returns. The temple bell therefore functions as a powerful teacher, not primarily because of the profound noise it generates, but precisely because it points us with exquisite precision towards the moment after the luminous void, where true listening begins, where profound insight can bloom. Zen masters continually challenge us. Listen not to the sound, but to the echo, to the fading, to the inevitable return to stillness. The relentless demands of the modern world, both external and internal, continually inundate us with noise. Yet Zen extends an invitation, a gentle beckoning to discover the sound beneath sound, the luminous moment existing between thoughts, the expansive space where pure awareness breathes uncluttered and unburdened. To sit with silence is to embark on a profound journey of returning home to our authentic, untroubled nature. Sora's transformative experience was not a dramatic eradication of her thoughts. Rather, it was a subtle yet profound shift in her relationship to them. She began to recognize with unwavering clarity that she was not her thoughts. She was the spacious, welcoming container in which they arose and dissolved, much like the bell's resonance, ringing then fading, always inevitably returning to the profound wellspring of silence. The understanding of silence as a presence rather than an absence is a radical shift in perspective. It challenges our conditioned tendency to fill every void. This ground of being is often referred to as big mind or no mind in Zen, a state of pure open awareness that is always accessible beneath the surface of mental activity. When Sora connected with this, she realized her true nature was vast and still not limited by her busy thoughts. This is a crucial step in emotional and mental liberation. Psychological insight. Silence as a path to nervous system regulation. In the paradigm of modern psychology, particularly within trauma therapy and somatic practices, the role of stillness is considered not just powerful, but absolutely essential for deep healing and integration. For individuals living with chronic anxiety, silence can often feel inherently threatening, as if the mind, in its desperate attempt to maintain control, rushes in to fill the perceived void with a cacophony of worry and rumination. For those experiencing depression, silence may feel oppressively heavy, echoing with the raw pain of disconnection and profound sadness. In the context of post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, silence can paradoxically trigger vivid flashbacks or release deeply stored somatic tension, making it an intimidating space. However, when approached gently with compassion and under skilled guidance, silence transforms into a profound mirror. It reflects back our inner landscape, allowing us to witness our mental and emotional patterns without judgment. Sora's initial experience, where her mind became louder in silence, perfectly reflects what many individuals encounter during the early stages of meditation. Thoughts rise like relentless waves, often overwhelming. But if we commit to sitting long enough with patient awareness, we begin to discern the deeper underlying rhythm beneath the waves, the quiet hum of our own inherent aliveness. In neuroscience, it has been observed that during periods of silence, the brain shifts into its default mode network, a crucial space for integration of experiences, processing of memories, and fostering of creativity. In somatic terms, sustained periods of silence help to profoundly re-regulate the nervous system, providing essential space for inner coherence to emerge and for deeply held tension to safely release. Renji's profound wisdom, invite, not strike, beautifully encapsulates the therapeutic principle of approaching inner states with a gentle invitation rather than forceful confrontation. The bell, therefore, becomes a powerful metaphor for awareness, for presence, and for the profound act of letting go. It teaches us that true peace isn't found in a frantic search, but in allowing the stillness to reveal itself. Meditative closing, the echo of inner peace. Tonight, create a sacred space for yourself. Find a small bell, or if you have none, simply choose to sit in profound quietude. Breathe in slowly, deeply filling your lungs. Then breathe out, releasing all tension. If you are using a bell strike, at once gently allowing its resonance to fill the air. Then listen not only to the fading sound, but with even greater intention to the luminous moment after. Feel the profound silence as it gently lands in the room, enveloping you. Then feel it land deep within your own being. And with a tender, open-hearted curiosity, ask yourself, what truly arises When there is no external noise, when the incessant mental chatter subsides, can I truly rest in the spaciousness that exists beneath my thoughts? The Buddha, in his profound simplicity, once stated, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Sometimes that profound word is not a word at all. It is silence. It is presence. It is the ethereal sound of a bell disappearing. And you, in that profound stillness, are the one who truly hears it resonating with your own inner peace. The journey continues, leading us into the heart of change and acceptance. The seventh story, The Candle and the Wind, speaks to our deepest fears of loss and the profound beauty of vulnerability. The storm had not yet arrived, but the wind had already begun its ethereal whisper. The lamps along the monastery corridor swayed gently, their flames bending like slender dancers casting shifting shadows that rippled across the rice paper doors of the meditation hall. The intoxicating scent of rain arrived before the first drop fell, earthy, electric, inevitable. In a quiet corner of the temple, a single candle flickered in front of a small, unadorned altar. It was a meditation candle, its simple flame used by practitioners to rest their gaze when the mind refused to settle a focal point for restless attention. Tonight that candle was lit for a woman named Ayame. She sat in zazen, before it, hands folded delicately in her lap, her breath shallow and uneven, her shoulders rigid with tension. Her eyes were fixed on the dancing flame, but her mind was a tempestuous whirlwind, a maelstrom of worry and fear. Ayame had always harbored a deep, almost paralyzing fear of change. To others, she presented an outward facade of calm poise and utter composure, reliable, unwavering, a pillar of strength. She had dedicated nearly a decade to her work as a hospice nurse, tending with compassionate hands to those whose lives were inexorably drawing to a close. She knew instinctively how to hold a trembling hand, how to speak softly when words themselves ran out, how to be present in the face of ultimate impermanence. But when it came to her own life, to endings, to uncertainty, to the raw act of letting go, she trembled beneath her composed surface. Her husband had left her 6 months prior, not out of cruelty but confusion, their paths simply diverging, their once intertwined lives gently drifting apart. At first, she clung desperately, then vehemently denied the reality, and finally she simply collapsed, her spirit fractured. A kind friend, sensing her deep despair, had whispered the word "retreat" and handed her a simple brochure. She had folded it into her purse and for weeks ignored it, until one night her apartment felt so overwhelmingly hollow, so resonant with absence, that she could literally hear her own heart breaking in the suffocating silence. And now here she was, watching a single fragile candle, desperately trying not to fall apart herself. The wind rose outside, a subtle shift in the air, and the candle flame within the hall trembled, dancing erratically. Ayame tensed her body, instinctively reacting. She cupped her hands protectively around the fragile flame, a futile, almost irrational gesture. No window was open. The breeze was gentle, merely a whisper, but something primal surged inside her, the desperate need to protect, to preserve, to keep the flickering flame of certainty alive. Her breath quickened, a frantic, shallow gasp. What if it goes out? What if everything ends? What if all that I hold dear simply vanishes? Just as her thoughts began to spiral into a vortex of panic, a hand, gentle and reassuring, rested lightly on her shoulder. It was the temple teacher, a venerable nun named Mayoko, whose very presence was like the serene space between notes in a lullaby, soothing, expansive, profoundly calming. She did not scold. She did not offer verbose explanations. She simply sat beside Ayame, her gaze fixed on the dancing candle, and with a soft, resonant voice said, "Let it flicker." Ayame looked at her confused, her brow furrowed. "But it might go out," she whispered the words so heavy with fear. Miyoko nodded her eyes, acknowledging the fear without judgment. "Yes," she replied, her voice filled with quiet wisdom. "And if it does, what will remain is the space it lit." They sat in profound silence, the air thick with unspoken understanding. The wind teased the flame again, a playful yet powerful force. It bent, it danced, but it did not go out. Ayame exhaled slowly, a profound, shuddering release. For the first time, she didn't try to stop the flicker. She simply watched, a quiet acceptance settling over her. Zen reflection, embracing the dance of impermanence. The image of the candle and the wind is a timeless and profoundly evocative symbol in Zen. The candle represents so many aspects of our human experience: our desperate need for control, our meticulously crafted plans, the fragile constructs of our identity, and our deeply cherished yet ultimately illusory notions of permanence. The wind conversely embodies the relentless, undeniable forces of change, the passage of time, the inevitability of loss, the inherent unpredictability of life's endless breath. In our desperate clinging to the illusion of a steady, unwavering flame, we often tragically forget the very nature of fire itself. It lives precisely because it flickers, because it is in constant motion, adapting to the very air that sustains it. It glows with such exquisite beauty because it is inherently vulnerable, open to the elements. Zen teaches us a radical truth: not to futilely protect the flame, but to cultivate a deep, abiding friendship with the wind. What is inherently impermanent, say the Zen masters, is not broken or flawed. It is vibrantly alive. When Mayoko gently instructed Ayame to let it flicker, she was not merely speaking of wax and wick. She was pointing to the profound, liberating truth that everything we hold dear, everything we love, is inherently fragile, subject to the ceaseless currents of change. And that very fragility is not a flaw. It is, in fact, the shimmering doorway to presence, to a deeper, more authentic engagement with life as it truly is. This acceptance of impermanence is central to liberation. Our suffering often arises from the attempt to hold on to what is inherently fluid. The flickering flame is a metaphor for life itself, constantly changing, never static, yet always present in its fleeting moment. To let it flicker is to allow life to unfold naturally, without the ego's interference or the mind's rigid demands. It's about finding stability, not in the unchanging nature of things, but in our capacity to adapt and witness the change. Psychological insight: from rigidity to resilience. From a therapeutic perspective, the fear of uncertainty stands as one of the fundamental core drivers of anxiety. We are inherently wired to fear the unknown, the unsettling prospect of not knowing what lies ahead, the profound dread of losing what we have painstakingly built, the terrifying inability to control an outcome. This pervasive fear activates the ancient primal nervous system's fight or flight response, compelling us to grip tighter to familiar routines, to secure relationships, to rigid identities, even when these structures no longer serve our highest good or contribute to our well-being. Ayame's visceral instinct to cup her hands protectively around the flickering candle flame perfectly reflects this common human pattern, an over-reliance on control as a desperate means to manage internal chaos, and the avoidance of change as a perceived shield from the pain of grief. However, modern psychology, through decades of research and clinical practice, unequivocally teaches that resilience is not found in rigidity, in an unyielding resistance to change. On the contrary, true resilience is discovered and cultivated in flexibility, in the profound capacity to adapt to bend and to flow with life's unpredictable currents. In acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, a cutting edge behavioral therapy practitioners actively help clients to sit with discomfort instead of instinctively escaping or avoiding it. They are guided to consciously let go, not of their desires or values, but of the rigid need for certainty and control over outcomes. Ayame's healing journey began not when the candle magically stopped flickering, but when she profoundly stopped fearing the flicker itself. This shift from fear to acceptance is the bedrock of psychological well-being. This therapeutic approach aligns with the concept of distress tolerance. Instead of trying to eliminate uncomfortable emotions like the flicker of fear, the goal is to develop the capacity to tolerate and be present with them without reacting impulsively or defensively. By allowing the fear to be present, Ayame broke the cycle of avoidance and gained agency. This self-compassionate exposure to discomfort builds internal resources and cultivates a deeper sense of self-trust, recognizing that the space it lit, her own innate awareness and capacity, is far more enduring than any external condition. Meditative closing, becoming the light itself. Tonight, as darkness descends, find a simple candle. Light it and place it before you. Watch its flame flicker dance and shift in the subtle currents of the air. Do not attempt to protect it. Do not attempt to steal the air around it, trying to force it into a static, unchanging form. Simply be with it, observing its inherent impermanence. As you breathe in, let your inner voice gently affirm, "This is the moment." As you breathe out softly, whisper, "I let it change." Notice how the flame dances, never the same shape twice, never certain of its next movement, yet always profoundly present. The Buddha, in his timeless wisdom, stated, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." This is not a warning of impending doom. It is, in fact, a profound invitation, an invitation to love the flicker, to embrace the inherent transience of life, to consciously let go when the wind inevitably comes, and to trust that even when the flame eventually dwindles and is gone, the sacred space it warmed will forever remain within you. And maybe, just maybe, in that deep trust, you will discover that you are not merely the candle of fragile temporary form. You are in your truest essence the light itself. The journey continues, moving beyond the fear of change to the profound acceptance of the self, even its hidden corners. The 12th story, "The Shadow That Asked for Love," speaks to the universal human tendency to deny or reject parts of ourselves and the profound healing that comes from radical self-acceptance. There was a corridor in the temple that no one spoke about. It was narrow and dim, tucked away behind the oldest wing where the floorboards creaked underfoot like weary ancient bones. The light, even at midday, never quite reached its far end, and a quiet chill perpetually resided there, a subtle breath of something forgotten lingering in the air. The younger novices whispered among themselves, calling it the Shadow Hall. Most hurried past it, eyes fixed straight ahead, their robes brushing softly against the cold walls, eager to escape its unsettling aura. But one evening, just before dusk softened the edges of the world, a young woman named Nami inexplicably stopped there. She stood at the threshold, her hand resting hesitantly on the old weathered wooden beam, her breath tight and constricted in her chest. "It's just a hallway," she whispered to herself, a desperate attempt at reassurance. But her body, with its visceral, intuitive knowing, remembered otherwise. Nami had arrived at the monastery not out of ambition, not out of a spiritual quest for enlightenment, but from a place of profound desperation. She had suffered in silence for most of her life, mastering the art of wearing smiles that never quite reached her eyes, of giving endlessly without truly receiving, of meticulously hiding the parts of herself she deeply feared others could never truly love. Deep within her lived a wound too ancient to name, too raw and festering to ignore, a deep-rooted shame planted long ago by unseen hands, continually watered by unspoken trauma, and diligently tended by the relentless self-protective stories she had constructed to survive. I am too much, so I am not enough. If they knew who I really was, they would surely leave. She was consistently praised for her boundless compassion, widely admired for her unshakable calm, but underneath her gentle kindness lived a quiet, persistent terror, the insidious belief that she was not fundamentally truly good. At night, in the solitary confines of her cell, she would sometimes cry silently, without a sound, not because of something specific, but because of something profoundly missing, a deep connection, a cohesive sense of self, a feeling of being truly at home within her own skin. The abbot, with his discerning wisdom, had noticed her unspoken struggle. He did not question her or probe her pain. He simply offered her a small, flickering lantern. "There is a place in the temple," he said, his voice soft but resonant, "that waits to be seen, to be acknowledged. Take this light, go there, but do not go with the intention of changing what you find. Go only to listen." And so Nami stood at the ominous entrance to the shadow hall. She lit the lantern. Its fragile flame fluttered, mirroring the frantic pounding of her heart. Each step she took into the deepening gloom was a silent internal conversation between her profound fear and her nascent courage. The ancient floorboards creaked ominously beneath her weight. The walls seemed to subtly narrow, pressing in. Shadows gathered around her feet, like old half-forgotten memories. And then she saw it, her reflection, a full-length mirror, old dust-covered and slightly cracked, at the top corner, stood at the very end of the hallway. It held her image like a profound question. She lifted the lantern higher, and in its fragile light, she saw herself, not just the composed face she presented to the world, but the eyes that had cried in silent despair, the mouth that had swallowed unspeakable rage, the body that had carried emotional weight, never meant for her to bear. And standing just behind her, in the mirror's unsettling depth, was a shadow. She gasped a sharp, involuntary intake of breath. Instinctively, she stumbled backward, her body recoiling in fear. But the shadow did not vanish. It remained unthreatening, not monstrous, only profoundly watching. Nami trembled, a visceral tremor running through her. "What are you?" she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible. And deep within her, from a place she hadn't known, existed a voice resonant and clear replied, "I am the part of you you tried to forget. I am your fear, your shame, your pain. I am not here to hurt you. I am here because I was hurt. Tears came then not of terror, but of profound recognition of a truth finally acknowledged. Nami sank to her knees, her defenses crumbling. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice broken but sincere. I didn't know how to love you. And in that moment of radical acceptance, the shadow seemed to step forward, not to merge, but to subtly become light. Zen reflection, the wholeness of the self. In Zen, we are taught a radical form of acceptance, not only to observe the present moment with unwavering attention, but to embrace all that arises within it, even the parts of ourselves we have been conditioned to fear, to deny, or to reject. The shadow, in this deeply metaphorical story, is not to be interpreted as inherently evil or as an external enemy. On the contrary, it represents the unloved self, the hidden child within the suppressed emotions, the unacknowledged truths, the aspects of our being that we have exiled into the darkness of unconsciousness. Zen, in its profound wisdom, does not fragment the self into simplistic categories of good and bad. Instead, it poses a singular yet profound question. Can you cultivate a spaciousness within yourself, a vastness of heart and mind that is expansive enough to hold it all, the light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow, the celebrated and the shamed? Can you truly see the exquisite lotus, symbolizing purity and awakening gracefully growing from the mud of suffering? The shadow hall was never in truth haunted by external spirits. It was simply waiting, waiting patiently for light, waiting for love, waiting for the courage to be fully seen and accepted. When Nami, with an act of profound courage, turned towards it, not with the intention to fix or to banish, but with the genuine intention to listen with an open heart, the process of transformation truly began. What was once exiled became profoundly embraced. What was once feared became integrated, a source of new strength. This fundamentally is the very heart of Zen practice: compassion without conditioned presence, without preference, and an unwavering acceptance of reality as it is. The concept of the shadow in Zen is closely tied to the idea of non duality. When we label parts of ourselves as bad or unacceptable, we create an internal division, a form of suffering. Zen encourages transcending these dualistic labels by observing all phenomena, including our inner experiences, with equanimity. Nami's act of kneeling and apologizing to her shadow is a powerful symbol of self compassion and integration. It's about bringing awareness and kindness to the parts of us that have been neglected or shamed, allowing them to finally be seen and healed, transforming them from a source of fear into a source of wholeness. Psychological insight, shadow work, and inner child healing. In the vast landscape of modern psychology, particularly within the groundbreaking work of Carl Jung, the shadow archetype represents the unconscious aspects of ourselves that we individually and collectively deny, suppress, or actively reject. This rejection often stems from profound shame, unresolved trauma, or the conditioning of early life experiences. These unacknowledged parts crucially do not simply disappear. They continue to exert their influence from the unseen depths of the unconscious. They may manifest as an insistent inner critic driving self-sabotage, as repetitive, unhelpful emotional patterns, as pervasive anxiety or chronic depression. Shadow work is the intentional, courageous process of bringing these disowned parts into conscious awareness, approaching them with genuine curiosity, radical acceptance, and profound care. Nami's transformative experience vividly mirrors the profound journey that trauma informed therapists guide their clients through recognizing and acknowledging suppressed emotions, allowing oneself to feel them without judgment or suppression, and compassionately meeting the wounded inner child with unconditional love and acceptance. When we actively avoid the shadow, when we suppress its messages, it paradoxically gains control over us from the hidden darkness. But when we courageously meet it, when we engage with its raw truth, it transforms from a feared adversary into a wise and illuminating teacher. The shadow does not demand perfection. It simply asks for witnessing for its story to be seen, heard, and integrated. This therapeutic approach is about integration, not elimination. It's about making the unconscious conscious, thereby gaining agency and choice over behaviors that might otherwise be reactive or self sabotaging. Nami's "I'm sorry I didn't know how to love you" is the essence of self compassion, a crucial element in healing shame and trauma. It allows for a reframing of past experiences, acknowledging the adaptive function of these shadow parts while inviting them into a more harmonious internal system. The transformation of the shadow into light symbolizes the release of the energy that was once bound in resistance and denial, now available for growth and authentic living. Meditative closing, embracing all that you are. Tonight, create a sanctuary for yourself by sitting in a quiet, undisturbed place. Gently dim the lights, allowing a soft twilight to settle around you. Close your eyes and allow your breath to become slow, deep, and utterly gentle. With a tender, open-hearted curiosity, ask yourself, what part of me have I perhaps unknowingly or even consciously not loved? What raw emotion, what unacknowledged truth waits patiently in the dark corners of my being to be seen and embraced? Now visualize yourself holding a lantern, its warm, gentle light extending before you. With courage and compassion, walk through your inner hallway, the metaphorical corridors of your unconscious mind. When you encounter a shadow, when a difficult emotion or a hidden part arises, pause. Do not banish it. Do not attempt to explain it away or rationalize its presence. Simply profoundly say to it, I see you. You are welcome here. The Buddha, in his boundless compassion, taught, as a mother would protect her only child with her life, so must we extend boundless love to all beings, including ourselves. Your shadow is not a testament to your failure or brokenness. It is in truth your forgotten friend, a part of you yearning for recognition and integration. And when you embrace it, when you bring it back into the fold of your awareness, you become unequivocally whole. Our final steps bring us to the ultimate liberation, the realization that the gate to freedom was never truly locked. The 25th story, The Gate That Was Never Locked, reveals this profound truth. For as long as he could remember, Sora believed he was trapped. He couldn't pinpoint the exact moment or place where this prison began, only that it was a constant, pervasive presence, a sense of something held tight around his life. It wasn't a cage of iron, nor a wall of stone, but something softer, subtler, unseen rules, unspoken expectations, the invisible suffocating weight of needing to be a certain way to conform to perform. He grew up in a quiet, reserved family, not overtly cruel, but profoundly controlled. Things were spoken indirectly, smiles were earned through diligent effort, and personal desire was perpetually softened into dutiful obligation. And so, from early childhood, Sora meticulously learned to behave to succeed according to external metrics, to fit seamlessly into predetermined molds, and to wait. He waited through school, enduring the long prescribed years. He waited through a love that felt more like a polite agreement than a passionate connection. He waited through a job that paid well, but left his chest hollow and aching by lunchtime, a persistent void. Until one morning, he looked out the window of his 10th floor apartment and in a voice barely audible whispered, "Is this truly my life, or just the path of least resistance, the easiest escape?" That very night, with a quiet resolve, he packed a small, unassuming bag and simply walked away. He arrived at the monastery uncertain, his face unshaved, his words unspoken, raw with the journey. He fully expected to be turned away, to be judged as unfit for such a sacred place. Instead, he was greeted by a woman, her face serene, diligently sweeping dust from the temple steps. She looked at him for only a moment, her gaze gentle and knowing, and said, "You've come far, come closer." He stayed. He worked diligently in the gardens, finding solace in the earth. He ate his simple meals, in profound silence discovering a new depth to each bite. He folded linens with trembling hands, feeling the tactile reality of the fabric. Each day, a little more of the inner noise, the constant mental clamor, faded into the background. But the persistent feeling of being trapped, of being confined, did not. It followed him like a second skin, an insidious idea, a tightness in his chest, the faint nagging echo of a voice that perpetually whispered, "You cannot be free, not yet, not ever." One quiet afternoon, while gathering fallen branches near the ancient forest edge, he came upon an old weathered wooden gate. It stood modestly between two moss-covered stone markers, draped in a thick mantle of ivy. Its hinges were rusted, groaning with age, and the wood itself was soft, porous, from years of relentless rain and the slow passage of time. A simple rope looped loosely over the latch, tied with a casual, almost accidental knot. It looked ancient, sacred, forgotten, a relic of a bygone era. He stared at it, a profound sense of recognition stirring within him, a longing, a subtle fear, a nascent question. He reached for the rope, his fingers hesitant, then pulled it gently aside. The gate creaked open with a long, drawn-out groan, a sigh of release. There was no lock, no resistance whatsoever, only the sound of something profoundly misunderstood finally giving way. He stepped through. On the other side, nothing in the external landscape had changed. Not the trees, not the whispering wind, not the color of the boundless sky. But inside him, everything shifted. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "It was never locked," he whispered, his voice choked with profound emotion. "Not once, not ever." He began to cry, not out of bitterness or a sense of being fooled, but because he had in truth held himself prisoner for so long, constrained by an illusion of his own making. He returned to the temple, a profoundly different man. He laughed more freely, walked barefoot across the cool earth, cooked his meals slowly and mindfully, and listened with a new, profound depth. Someone once asked him what he had found beyond the gate. He smiled a genuine, radiant smile and simply said, "Myself without the story." Zen reflection, the illusion of the inner cage. In Zen, the ultimate barrier is never truly external. It is fundamentally mind-made, a delicate yet incredibly strong veil woven from the intricate threads of memory, the pervasive grip of fear, and the deeply entrenched constructs of our ego-driven identity. We often live under the pervasive belief, I am not ready, I am not allowed, I must earn my freedom through arduous effort and perfect practice. But Zen, with its gentle, persistent wisdom, whispers a radical truth otherwise. The door is already open. It always has been. You simply need to step through. The gate that was never locked is the ultimate symbol of the illusion of separation from peace, from boundless presence, from our innate true nature. Sora's profound realization was not merely about a forgotten wooden gate in the woods. It was the transformative moment he ceased believing the insidious voice of inner conditioning, the pervasive narrative that whispered limitations. He stepped with profound courage into what already was his inherent, undeniable freedom. Zen Master Rinzai, in his timeless wisdom, once famously declared, "If you want to be free, turn your attention inward. Who is binding you?" The profound, liberating answer is never found out there in external circumstances or achievements. The gate itself is not the true barrier. The belief in the barrier is. This Zen teaching strikes at the core of self-imposed limitations. Our minds construct narratives of not enough, not ready, or not worthy, and these narratives become invisible bars. The gate is a metaphor for the mental constructs that keep us from our authentic selves. Sora's act of simply untying a loose rope and stepping through is a powerful symbol of realizing that the obstacles were internal, not external. Freedom in this context is not an external attainment, but an internal recognition and acceptance. It's about dismantling the internal architecture of self-limitation. Psychological insight, internalized limitations, and self-liberation. In psychological terms, Sora's deeply resonant story vividly reflects the very core of internalized limitation. Clients in therapy frequently describe a pervasive feeling of being stuck, trapped, or confined within an invisible cage. However, upon deeper exploration, guided by compassionate inquiry, it becomes clear that the bars of this perceived prison are not external circumstances, but rather constructs made of old, deeply ingrained narratives. The profound fear of rejection, the relentless pursuit of perfectionism, the debilitating guilt for simply wanting more from life. Therapy, in its essence, helps to name these internal gates, to bring them into conscious awareness, to examine their origins, to understand who or what put them there, and ultimately to discover that they are more often than not already unlatched. The crucial turning point, the moment of true liberation, is not contingent upon external permission, upon receiving a sign from the universe, or upon someone else unlocking the gate. It is fundamentally an act of inner permission. Sora did not embark on a frantic search for freedom. He profoundly realized he already was free, but had simply not yet stepped through the pervasive idea of being trapped. This profound realization is the essence of psychological liberation, gentle, quiet, and profoundly unequivocally yours. It's about dismantling the internal belief system that says I can't or I must, and replacing it with radical self-acceptance and agency. The subtle nature of the loose rope signifies that these internal limitations are not ironclad. They are often easily undone once awareness is brought to them. Meditative closing, stepping through your own gate. Tonight, as you settle into a quiet space, allow yourself to visualize with vivid clarity an ancient wooden gate weathered by time and elements. You stand before it, your breath steady. Now, with a tender and curious heart, ask yourself, what specific story, what old belief, What lingering fear within me insists that I cannot pass through this gate? Who or what told me I must wait, that I am not yet worthy, not yet ready? Now, with a profound act of gentle courage, reach forward in your imagination. Untie the metaphorical rope, open the gate, feeling its slow creaking release, and then consciously, deliberately step through. As you breathe in, let your inner voice affirm, I am not trapped. As you breathe out, softly declare, I am already free. The Buddha, in his profound simplicity, observed, the way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. So tonight, walk the path of your own heart. Step beyond the limiting stories, beyond the illusion of the gate, and into the life that was always patiently waiting for you. And in that step, soft, barefoot, profoundly honest, you truly return home. You've just journeyed through 25 Zen stories, not merely as a passive listener, but as a soul returning to its own quiet, inherent rhythm. If something in these narratives touched you, if a single phrase settled deep within your chest like a conscious breath, if for even one fleeting moment you felt seen, softened, or simply profoundly present, then we've shared something truly sacred. This is the empty boat, a sacred space where silence teaches stories heal and the ordinary becomes holy once more. Now we invite you to bring your voice into this quiet river. Share with us in the comments which story lingered in your heart, which moment made you pause, what truth rose to the surface as you listened. If these stories brought comfort, consider sharing them with someone you love, someone in need of stillness, of clarity, of a gentle light. And if you'd like to float with us further on this journey, subscribe to The Empty Boat, where each story is a lantern, each pause is a practice, and each video is an invitation not to change yourself, but to come home to who you already are. Thank you for sitting with us. May peace walk beside you, and may you always remember the boat is empty, and that's precisely why it floats.